What's up guys, Brian Haire here. Today we're going to be going over the quick businessman's cut and color. Alright, so we've got our model Andrew here, and we're going to be doing sort of a modernized version of the classic barbering haircut that guys would come in and just say they want the businessman's haircut. It's defined as having tapered sides and back, and then based on how much they're willing to style, more length on top. So what you can see him doing right here, I'm going to be working off of his head shape and just taking these clippers straight up. I section that top away after the round above the parietal ridge so that as I take those clippers straight up in the air, the head is going to curve away from it, creating that ledge that we're going to use for styling later on. I know normally when it comes to hair cutting, we're used to not wanting visible weight lines, but you'll see when it comes to styling how it's actually going to help out with this. Our model, he likes to wear his hair real nice and tight in the sides with enough length to have some versatile styling up top, which is great because that is the definition of the cut that we're doing. So what that ledge is going to do is it's going to give us the versatility and the possibility of getting a blend between the super short sides and however long we want to keep it on top. So if you see where that weight line is starting to build, it actually is following the bones of the head. So what's good about that is when you go to do this cut, that line is going to be in a different spot on every single guy that you're working with because you're actually working off of their bone structure, so there's no way that this haircut can fail. So I believe I'm actually working with a 2-blade on those clippers right there, and I'm just following the head up, and then as soon as the head starts to curve away is when I just float straight up in the air. You can see that line starting to drop down a little bit as we move into the back, and that's because that's the shape of the actual parietal bone. A lot of people, they'll have a great start going through the sides, but then they'll ignore how that bone kind of dips down in the back, and they'll just cut it straight across. That tends to be a bit of a problem because that's where most guys have their cowlicks. So keeping this shape coming down, almost down as far as the occipital, is going to make sure that any cowlicks that we have to deal with or he has to deal with when he's styling it, they're not going to be any problem for him because they're going to be up above that weight line. Now, one of the reasons that I chose to work with the clippers here is because it's just going to be a little bit faster. If you think about the businessmen that you're trying to appeal to or trying to get more of their business in your salon, they don't necessarily have a whole lot of time. They're either coming in on their lunch break or they're coming in after a long day and they just want to get this done and go home. Most of us that are watching this video, you probably work in salons that are unisex, and you just got to remember you're trying to get men to maybe come into a unisex salon rather than going down to their local barber. So you have to keep in mind that a lot of guys don't necessarily want to spend the great amount of time that women are used to spending in a salon. So I'm going with the clippers because I'm pretending he's on his lunch break here and I want to get a cut and a color in there so that I get him used to having more services. So the clippers are just going to get a little bit faster for me. Again, we're working through the other side now. Bringing that straight up, letting that weight line just create itself. Make sure you move the ear because just because it's clippers and not a pair of scissors, you can still nick somebody. So just to keep them comfortable, keep everything nice and safe, just move the ear out of your way. It's bendable, it doesn't hurt. You're not twisting it, you're just folding it over. It's fine. And then you can see as you float up, that little weight line right there is not only created, but you're creating a natural fade that's based off of their head. Now we're getting to the point where it's starting to connect with what we did earlier. Try to keep it, obviously, you want this to be symmetrical on both sides. So now that we've got all that clipper work done, I'm going to go in with the scissor over comb and really make sure that that is perfectly blended. There shouldn't be lots of work to do because the clippers are gonna put most of that fade in there. I like to do the scissor over comb really just to refine it and make sure that that's a perfectly seamless line. Because generally when you're doing a haircut like this, sometimes guys are gonna want it a good deal longer on top. So this is going to make sure that that fade and that blend are as seamless as possible. Because once I move into the top of the hair, that hair is gonna shoot up to several inches in length. So I wanna make sure here in that transition area, riding along that parietal ridge, it just looks spot on, looks nice and clean. One of the other good things about this haircut is its versatility. This is gonna work for him whether he's got an office job where he's gonna be wearing a suit, or if he's going out at night after work or on the weekends and wants to have it just a little more stylish, a little more cool. It's also a very modernized look, just depending on how you style it. In my consultation with my model, Andrew, we discussed that he likes to wear a part in his hair, so I also took that into consideration, and you'll see as we're cutting the top where that's gonna happen. Coming through back here, there's a little bit more to clean up back here because of his previous haircut. It was not cut the same way, so it didn't have that blend already. The clippers created a bit of a ledge because there's a much steeper curve away of the head as you get up over the occipital. So just coming through here and just taking that weight right out. You see, when I do my scissor over comb, a lot of people when they're getting started or trying to get more comfortable with scissor over comb think you have to move at a million miles a minute to plow through super fast. And it's not really about going super fast, it's just about being consistent. You see, I don't move really, really fast because I like to make sure that as I'm going nice and steady. The key is to try to do fewer passes so that you can move a little quicker. Sort of one of those, it sounds kind of funny. If you move slower, you'll get the job done quicker because you won't have to go through it as many times. Try to keep just the one blade moving. It also helps to have a steadier cut so that you won't have to go through as many times to refine any little skipped or missed hairs. You'll see as I'm doing the scissor over comb, I'm using the wide teeth of the comb. You can use whatever size teeth you're more comfortable with. I just like to use the wide teeth because the wider teeth you use, the less you're going to disturb the hair out of its natural fall. And when you're doing scissor over comb or clipper over comb, you want to try to get that hair in its natural fall so that you see exactly how it's gonna lay. So also why I'm doing this on dry hair. Here you can see our cool new head cam effect, so you can see over what I'm doing as well. Sometimes it helps if you're trying to brush up on your scissor over comb. If you can get right over what you're cutting and look down, it helps you see because it has a guide, just like when you're cutting long hair. The hair that's sitting on the spine of that comb is your guide. And so as you're lifting that comb up, hairs start to poke out, and those are what need to be cut off to get a nice, smooth, faded blend. So again, just floating straight up while I have that longer hair that's going to be the top clipped away, because I don't want that to get cut because it is going to be a little disconnected, which is why we're going to be able to have that super long length on top and then shorter through the sides. Now before I go into cutting the top, because remember we're trying to do this with the idea of saving time. You want to get through this in a lunch break, which may only be a half hour for some guys. So I did all that work on dry hair through the sides and the back because I like to know how it's going to look when I'm done. So I only have to cut it once. When it's wet, it tends to, throw you off a little bit. So now that that's cut, I'm going through and just popping a couple highlights into the top. It's all in the sake of saving time. He's got a really nice wave to his hair, so I'm just going with it. I'm going with the natural wave. I pushed over where he's gonna wear his part, so I know what's gonna sit on what side of the part. And I'm just taking lightener on the tip of my brush and then just eyeballing it. It's a very freehand way of just painting these in. This is what I call, it's the male balayage, it's the brolayage. Just kind of just seeing, what's going to look good with just a little bit lift of color. I'm not trying to make him blonde. I'm not trying to give him a super different effect. I just want to break up his solid one color base color a little bit so it's a little more interesting. Now also, in the sake of saving time, while those highlights are going is when I'm going to do my edger work. I'm going to come around. I like to work with a natural hairline because I feel like the less you shave off, the less it's going to grow back and look like it needs to be cleaned up in 2 days. I mean, I definitely want him to want to come back in as soon as it starts to get out of control, but you also want to make sure you're giving him something that, is worth their money. So I'm just coming in. I see as soon as the hair starts to weaken and it's not obviously his scalp anymore is where I just sort of round him off. I mean, you can do a little bit of sculpting for symmetry, but I try not to take it too high or too harsh and just work with it. Just coming around the ears. I don't like to go too high up. Again, my personal preference. I don't like the whole white wall look of having a lot of skin over the ears if I can help it. So doing this is just going to keep it neat. It's going to keep it clean. Alright, now that we've got him shampooed, we're going to move into the top of the head. I'm going to be working off of the high point of his head, and we're going to treat this as almost two different haircuts. There's going to be the front section and the back section. So finding that high point's key because, again, this haircut's going to be different for everyone because everyone's skull shape is different. For this particular model, that's where the high point of his head is, so that's where this sectioning is going to go. Everything in the front's going to get pushed forward. We'll get there eventually. Again, like I said, I want versatility, so the back of this haircut is actually going to be blended into the length that I created underneath. So off of that high point, it's going to be pie-shaped sections. I like to use point cutting techniques for a couple of reasons. One, I feel like it's going to give him a little bit softer of a grow out in case he decides he wants to have more length with this, because it won't bush out quite as fast. And also because he does have a pretty good wave pattern in his hair. So having that wave pattern, when I do point cutting, it's just going to kind of help it lay a little bit nicer. It's going to sort of fold into itself with those ends all coming to different lengths. So I'm just taking nice even pie shapes from the high point all the way around. I always think of it like slices of pizza. Now, before everyone gets crazy at how I'm holding my scissors and people start yelling that it's looking a little weird, it's because I'm using double swivel shears. It's just my personal preference. There's two swivels on the thumb. It allows for minimal arm movement, but maximum angle options. So as I'm working through here, I'm able to change the position of the scissors merely by changing the position of my fingers. So I know it looks a little weird, but I like it. I'm comfortable doing it, so I'm gonna. Just making sure that you keep it nice and consistent. I'm just bringing those sections up and around and actually coming around the shape of the head. Almost like a round layering, because I do want to remove some of that bulk. Because whether he's going to push it to the side or push it back, I want a nice even rounded layer so that it just sort of falls into itself. Even if it's a little tiny section, still consistent, coming all the way around to that division line that we created off the part of the head. Alright, spin them back around, do the same thing on the other side. Coming back down the middle, get that out of the way. See? There you go. Fun scissors. It's a good time. Working nice, clean, consistent sections. It'll help have nice, clean, consistent tension. So you'll always have a guide. I feel like if you work with a nice, even guide every single time, there's less cross-checking that you have to go back and do. It's your goal. If you can get it right the first time, awesome. Still, just going in. Nice deep point cutting. I like to add, he's got a great natural texture. I like to add even more. And that's what we get from the point cutting. Coming all the way up and around. And that last little section. And then just a little check. Alright, so we've got it blended through the back. Now it's time to create the shape that we want to create up front. I started with a section straight down the center of his head from the high point, and that's what's going to be my base. See, straight down, and then I lift up, straight up off of his head, minimal over direction because I want it to still have plenty of weight to it in case he wants to wear it pushed back or pushed up. Still point cutting, and I'm just having it go from short to long ever so slightly. It's not a super drastic slope, but it's enough that when he goes to style his hair and he pushes it to the side, he's got enough length to actually push. Again, take a little bit from the previous section into the new section, and then straight up. Technically, this would be like a square layering technique because it's very square with the head. Everything is coming straight up, almost like in a box, which is also good because when you're dealing with male clients, working with stronger shapes like square shapes are just going to come off a little bit more masculine. You know, you're going to eradicate that whole soft look because guys don't really ever want to be described as soft. So, square is good. Alright, we got that side done. So now we're coming back down the center again. So we get a little bit of where we've already worked. And we're building this length off of the hair that was at that high point in the head. This is where you get to kind of put plenty of your own artistic spin on this. If you want something that's a much more drastic slope, so it's much longer up front, not a problem. Totally doable. You'll just obviously have it come higher as it gets towards the front. Work nice clean sections here. A little bit of my old section, a little bit of new. Just switching my position here so that you guys can see it a little bit better. Nothing super drastic has changed. And just making sure you're nice and consistent all the way through the front of the head. Our last section here, again, just gonna come straight up. Point cut those last little bits out of there. And this is where the top is going to be, or I'm sorry, not the top, the front is going to be a little bit more disconnected in the front. As I'm drying him just real loose, I want to work with his wave, so I'm just using my fingers. I don't want to disrupt his natural texture because I think that's what's going to help make it look stylish. It's cool having a little bit of movement, and as it's drying you can see where we went from very short in the sides to a much greater length up top, but because you've got that little bit of a weight line and then that blended back, it makes that disconnected front look much more acceptable. Here I'm just working with a nice light styling cream, something with a little bit of texture to it, so that while I'm working with his natural texture, still maintains a cool look. And if you notice those highlights that we did, super subtle. Like I said, we're not trying to change his color too much. I'm just trying to make what he's got look a little more interesting. He's a businessman. He can be any businessman. He can be a lawyer, whatever. He's in a suit. This isn't anything that's going to look too disruptive when he goes back to work. It's just going to be a more modernized, slightly more stylish version of the classic businessman's cut. So here you go. Here's Andrew. Classic businessman cut and color. Slight highlights. Disconnected. Yeah. Blended in the back. Alright, there you go guys. Thanks.